Hi, I'm Kaila Henry, and I'm a realtor in Bozeman, Montana at Realty One Group Peak.
See, it's not that easy, is it?
It's hard.
So I am Kathy Zalewski. I also am a realtor with Realty One Group Peak in Bozeman, Montana.
So today we wanted to do a video about what do title companies do. They're a very integral part in a real estate transaction in Montana, and I think a lot of people just don't really understand maybe their whole role in the process.
Right. It's the place that a lot of people just think it's the place they go to sign the papers.
Yeah, which is true.
That is part of what
they do. But they do a lot more.
Right. So probably the first encounter that you'll have as a buyer with a title company is to go drop off your earnest money, your earnest deposit. So that's the first time you'll probably hit the title company. Although some title companies you can do it online now.
Yeah, or you can wire transfer.
Yeah.
So keeping in mind that just those things, but you'll hear from a title company for that.
So when we open Escrow, that's what it's called. We send the title company a copy of the buy-sell agreement and all the other pertinent docs that the title company needs. But then they can open Escrow, and the opening actually happens when they get your earnest money. Then they've got money, and that's the biggest part of what the title company does is they really do handle all the monies that go through the real estate transaction.
And the title company truly is a neutral third party. So they're not on the buyer side, they're not on the seller side. They are truly the ones that are just getting the money together and working out the prorations, as well as a few other things that we'll talk about. But just knowing that they're not working for either one or the other side, just facilitating the deal.
Right. So once they've got the earnest money, they start their job in a kind of a preliminary format. But the first thing they do is they'll search the property and go through a title search and look for any liens against the property. They'll also research, I shouldn't say research ownership, but they'll just make sure that the person that owns it.
Clear title.
Right.
Right.
And they might also pull up a certificate of survey and try and match that with the legal description so that
on the buy sell.
Right. So that we are sure that we are looking at the same property. If it's 44 acres on the buy sell, is it still 44 acres on the legal description? That kind of thing. So they look into all the details there.
They will also, when you're a seller, reach out to you for your loan payoff info. So please do share that with them because they will handle paying off if you owe any money on your home still before you get your proceeds from it. So they'll handle that. And then I do believe they actually do a background search on some buyers occasionally just to see if they have any back due child support payments or taxes because that might affect whether they can purchase or not.
Yeah. And that also happens on the buy side. The lender will be looking into those things as well because it does affect their ability to borrow money. Yeah. So
don't be alarmed if you hear from them or have them asking some of those questions.
Right. So then while they are looking through that, they also generally will manage, if the property that is being bought and sold has an HOA, they'll generally contact the HOA, find out if there's any HOA dues owed, find out what deposit the HOA might require. A buyer usually pays an HOA fee the whole year up front or 6 months up front sometimes.
Yeah. And there can be those transfer fees.
Yes.
Transfer fees. Capital improvement fees. So can be two different things. They're kind of used interchangeably in our area. We'll, I think, take that on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
But just know those are
so the title company kind of looks into everything that would be attached to the property. HOA, they might also look at water rights for you, determine if the property has water rights. And if so, there's a well on the property and there's water rights, then they'll also create a line item for the transfer of those water rights from the seller to the new owner to the buyer. So they do quite a bit. Yes. Yep. That is kind of unseen. And I think a lot of times when people get to they're signing the settlement statement, they're looking at the 60 line items and going, whoa. But they make sure that everything is I's dotted, T's crossed, transfers in the right way, and that you are assured of your ownership in the interests that all lie with that property.
Yeah.
Water rights, mineral rights, whatever. They do all of that.
And I always say, honestly, from a title standpoint, no news is good news. We don't really want to hear from them because if we're hearing from them, there's a problem, right?
Yes.
And so to me, you kind of want all that, I'm going to say boring stuff. It's not boring. It's very important and very interesting. But all of that stuff kind of going on in the background while you're doing, again, your own research, due diligence, and kind of looking at those things. But
right.
I think one of my favorite things that a title company does is they handle all prorations. So if a client is purchasing an investment property, we can tell that title company, hey, please make sure the security deposits transfer and the rent gets prorated to our closing date. And I think that the buyer actually gets closing day. I think. Again, title companies, that's really their job. But again, they handle all the prorations. So same things. They handle tax prorations. If there's a propane tank on the property, of course, we as the listing agent or sellers will need to get the title company how much propane is in there. But then the title company will handle charging the buyers for the remaining propane in there and getting you your money back on that.
Right.
And
prorations for HOA so that you get charged with only the part of the year that you've used the property.
They also will hold, of course, lenders will occasionally send their money early. So that money then goes, I think, into escrow. But again, the title company holds that and it can hold it for a day or two. Same thing if a buyer is maybe going out of town and they want to drop their closing costs or their balance due early, you can do that. The title company will hold and make sure all those funds stay there, and then the funds will only get distributed when they have funded and recorded at the courthouse, which kind of leads us into our next thing that they do, which is creating the deed for transfer.
Right. So that is one of two documents that needs to be signed, wet signed in the state of Montana. The deed, of course, which transfers the property from one owner to another, and then also the affidavit that you haven't created any new liens against the property since you went under contract or since they issued the title commitment. So before we get too far, the title commitment will show any, that's how they issue title insurance, which is another thing the title companies do. All of this is kind of a service that they provide. The money is handled is actually part of escrow, not part of title or title insurance. So the title company really does two parts things to the transaction, but the title commitment relates to the title insurance. But on there, you're going to see things like easements, utility easements, or potentially I had an issue with somebody had a 10% ownership interest in a property that I was representing the seller. We had to track that person down and make sure that they got compensated for their 10% out of the proceeds. Yeah. That was fun.
It's a fun surprise.
But the title company is great at alerting you to those surprises well in advance of it becoming an issue. And that is what they do. That is, they do the title research. In some instances, if you're old like I am, there used to be abstract companies, and that's what abstract companies did. And that's before the days of title insurance, but they'd go through and look for any liens or anything legally tied, any public record legally tied to that property address.
And that is both beneficial to the buyer and the seller, right? As a buyer, you do not want to buy a property that has clouded title or isn't clear just for you.
Right.
And as a seller, you don't then want somebody tracking you down 6 months, a year later being like, oh, you sold that property? My grandfather had a 10% interest in it. I'd like my $20,000.
$200,000.
Who knows what you did with that money, right? So it's in, again, both parties benefit to really make sure that, again, the property is free and clear. And again, sometimes it's not often, but sometimes time can get away. You know, we've also had some challenges where there appeared to be an old loan on the property, but it wasn't really true. We just never could find the document, or couldn't for a while find the document that released it. But again, with enough time, thanks to the title company, we were able to contact a string of bank people to get that cleared.
Well, and I think that even today at the signing I did, banks get bought by other banks.
That was the problem. That was our problem.
And in Montana, we're fortunate enough to still have some very small local banks like Flanagan State Bank or Manhattan Bank, and I shouldn't say they're small, but they're definitely not like Chase or Wells Fargo. And those banks sometimes get absorbed by larger entities, and some of that paperwork gets a little squirrely. So it is. And that's just a lien. Now imagine when somebody does a handshake deal that kind of gets written by somebody, and it might have been recorded, and maybe they had the address wrong, but they had the right legal description. And you know what? I'm really thankful for title companies and the work that they do to drill down in this and find it for us. And as a buyer or seller, you should too, because whatever you do, whether you're buying or selling, you want that clear. You want it to be clear. You don't want anything chasing you around for the next 15 years. You want,
not on
you want
your
it done.
biggest asset, most likely. It's not a time when you want to be messing around.
Right. So title companies do, then there is the aspect of the title insurance, which is the title commitment we just talked about, making sure there's nothing hanging out there from previous owners or anything.
And really quick, the title insurance, I think, can be a little bit, most often in our minds, insurance is something you pay and it goes forward. Title insurance is the one insurance I know of anyways that is retroactive. And so it is common, I would say 99.9% of the time, the sellers will pay for the title commitment. And that is because they are the ones ensuring, yes, we have clear title and we will deliver that to you, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer.
Right.
And so, again, that is something that is typically charged to the seller, and then is a retroactive thing, so that then when you've closed on the property as a buyer and maybe someone says, oh, well, I had this out here, you can say, nope, see, we cleared it right here.
Right. So think of it this way, like the seller says, thank you for paying me what I wanted for my property.
Yes.
And as such, I'm going to give you this document that I paid for the title company to research and make sure that your property that you're buying from me is 100% free and clear and you own it outright.
I know that it is.
Right.
But here's your certification.
Right. So it's an insurance policy. So, but that is, so in addition to the escrow aspect, holding the monies, figuring out the prorations and all that thing, title companies also obviously sell and issue title insurance. So those are two things that they do. Then they also can help with other deed variations.
Yeah. So, most recently we had a family purchase a home together a number of years ago, and there was 4 of them on the deed. And then, life happens and some people moved away, but then 2 of them, mom and dad, came to us and said, hey, we want to sell the home you helped us purchase. We said, great. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, to get all 4 people's signatures all at once, specifically on closing day, will be hard, but also through all of the owner's disclosures, the listing paperwork, the mold disclosure, counter offers, all of the paperwork we end up doing, which still isn't a ton depending on where you're from, could be really challenging to constantly be having to ask and gather 4 people's signatures. And that's not me just being lazy by any means. I'm just trying to think ahead. And so I ask my clients, hey, do you all 4 still want to be involved in the sale? Or do we want to do a quick claim deed and just get 2 folks off and just deal with, the mom and dad who wanted to sell it? And she was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. That's a great idea, because they're super busy and really are not involved with the home at all anymore. And so we did that ahead of even listing it, because we need to have the sellers to list a home. And, I think it was, I'm going to say around $150 from the title company. They prepared a QCD, quick claim deed, and everybody signed it once, and that was done. Title was cleared up for them, so that it was a nice, easy transaction during the sale.
So quick claim deeds are really handy in a lot of aspects like that, when you've got a bunch of family or in a divorce situation. Mm-hmm. And if the divorce has been settled, you might just quick claim your interest to your spouse if they've paid you what they owe you for the house or something like that. But the title company can easily do any of those forms or legal documents.
And they do get a lawyer. So like title companies have lawyers
on staff,
but it just saves you the effort of finding one, explaining what you want to,
well, it would probably cost you a boatload more than $150.
So.
Yeah. So I think the other things that they do, like you had mentioned, if you get married and you want mm-hmm. either to add a spouse to the title or something like that, they can do that.
Or change how you hold title. So sometimes if you're not married, you might hold title as tenants in common, meaning that if one of you were to pass, your portion of the home would go to either your family, your brother, or whoever you've designated, not your partner. But most often when you're married, you might want to hold it as tenants in common. Or joint tenants with right of survivorship. Meaning that if, again, one of you were to pass, it would just go to the surviving spouse or person. You don't have to be married to utilize either one of those.
Also, here in Montana, one thing that, and it's probably less than 10% of all the transactions in the state annually, but something they do here in different places, it's called a land contract for deed, mm-hmm. Seller carry.
Seller financing.
Yep. So what that means is basically you're renting to own or leasing the property in really easy layman's terms. But the title company can get that all set up for you. So there's a payment system, and they're holding the money, and they don't necessarily hold the money, but they're buyer,
the intermediary, right?
The buyer is writing their check to and it's not the title company. Normally there's like another party involved, but anyway, they make it easy so that
they help with the structure of it.
Right. And then also when it's time for that to be settled, because a lot of times those are structured. So you put a big down and then you pay for a year, 2 years, 5 years, and then the rest of the note is due. They can handle all of that again in terms of recording a loan. If then you're able to acquire a loan for the property, transferring the property legally from one person to another. So they can work through all that. And sometimes that can get expensive and messy. So it's kind of nice that the title company will do it.
Yep. And then I think the last thing, we kind of jumped ahead of it, but of course the title company is the one who records the deed and closing documents at the courthouse. So we all get together on closing day, right? Well, that's not true. Buyers sign, sellers sign. I say we, meaning your agents. Everybody signs documents. Maybe they do a final title search to make sure no last minute liens have been put on there, verify with the lender if that's a thing. And then they go down and take the actual documents and record it in the public record at the courthouse, so that you're not having to do that, or we're not having to do that. They make sure that that's done right. And that's when we get the call that we are funded and recorded, and that's when it's done.
Right. And that's when you get the keys, not a moment sooner.
Or you get your money.
Or your money.
Yeah.
Title companies do a lot. They're integral. As real estate agents, those are not necessarily skills that we possess. Not that we couldn't. It's just that that's not what we do. That is not part of our job.
And to me, they are such a great resource. So if I'm having a hard time finding a well log, or maybe a septic permit, or I'm not totally sure, does this person own this parcel of land, or who's what? I call my title company, and I'm calling them and just asking what's best, what's going on here. We've had some recent tax changes that we've done a video on. We've asked them questions about how taxes will be prorated now, because there's some big question marks with how things might go moving forward. So they are a great resource, definitely for your real estate agent, also for you. Of course, if you don't know maybe who to ask, just ask your realtor, and of course we can either point you in the right direction or get the answers from the right people.
Yeah, I think one big thing in Montana here that's become a big thing is water rights.
Yes.
So the title company is great at helping us track down whether or not a property has water rights attached to it. And then if not, what the procedure is to try and apply for them. And then if you do have them or you are able to obtain them, then transferring them to the new owner. That's going to continue to be kind of a big deal. As Montana is paying closer attention to
moving into the future a little
where
bit.
The water is going and who's using it.
Yeah.
So the title company is great. Honestly, worth every penny. In terms of the fees that they charge you for the work
that they do
outside of the title insurance, the fees that they charge us for that are actually really relatively little.
Yes.
So definitely. One title company here in town makes delicious coffees. And so that's kind of a bonus when you go in there. Order something fancy. Like my guy just ordered like a caramel mocha macchiato. So,
is that why you're talking so fast?
No, I didn't have any. All right. But anyway, so title companies are great. And as a buyer, technically you get to choose who the title company is.
Oh, I disagree on that.
Kayla says no.
I've always thought that the seller gets to, because we, the sellers, are the ones paying for that title commitment. So we are the ones that get to choose who we want to furnish that title commitment, although the fees for it are all incredibly similar, if not the same, across the board for our title companies in town. So not a big deal. But I know sometimes, again, you will probably say the same thing. I have a preference on who I work with. And I will also say, when I get a listing, I'm already starting work with that title company because I want to have all of those documents up front, which is why, in my mind, the seller gets to pick the title company, because they are already starting to do work on that property and starting to kind of look into it for us. So I would want them to see it through to the end. But we can agree to disagree, Kathy.
Well, it's in the buy sell. So whoever writes the buy sell,
there's a
gets
line
right
in our MLS where
but
you
that
can
is
tell.
not
It's not part of the contract.
Yeah,
you're right, but I'm right too.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that. But yes, no, absolutely. Title companies develop relationships with us as agents in the hopes of getting our business, but they also are held to a standard because, quite frankly, the signing that I was just at, I want my sellers to be confident that what's happening there is right and legal and done and clean and clear.
Don't you wish you would have picked it?
Right. Well, I did, but no, I didn't. But I think that's really important. So when we talk about relationships and our confidence in the people that we're working with that provide this service to us, yeah, we do have favorites.
It's important. Well, because again, we talk about performance all the time, being able to perform. And when you have a track record with somebody, agents, lenders, title companies, or, title officers, escrow officers, you start to really build a trust and rapport with them. And that's to me how then I have confidence telling you, yes, we can perform on this date. If somebody so-and-so says they can get the loan closed on this date, it's fast in my book. If they say they can do it, I trust them because I've trusted them before and it's paid off.
So, yeah, I think, again, title companies, for what they charge, they do an awful lot of work for us that helps both the buyer and seller rest assured that what they're buying will belong to them or will no longer at all belong to them.
And for the seller too, just one more piece. I mean, again, we as agents do so much work, and again, very much in my eyes, part of our job, but digging up information and info on your property to then share with prospective buyers. So you don't have to do that, right? You maybe don't have an idea of where your well log is or a septic permit or anything along those lines, but that's our job to find that out because we know that buyers will want to have it.
Right. So if you've got any questions about title companies in Bozeman or about how title insurance works or any of that kind of stuff, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. We're always happy to respond. Thank you again for always watching our videos. We know you all are always watching.
To the end.
Yep. Thank you so much. And please subscribe and like, and we'll have more information coming for you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.